welcome to another episode of the Life of Elvis podcast. I'm your host, Elvis, and today with me is Jeremiah Dorph from the What If They're Wrong podcast. Happy to have you on. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks for having me on. Waiting to talk to you and finally here, so
Yeah, man.
we can
Excited about this one.
dive into stuff.
Oh, yeah. So let's get straight into it. So, what's your podcast mainly about?
So my podcast is What If They're Wrong, Paranormal podcast, and I cover anything that's outside the norm. So stuff you won't hear on like mainstream TV or like topics that you don't hear around a water cooler at work or whatever. So the podcast is basically just presenting information, and then the listener can decide what they want to take from it, what they want to get from it, and whether they believe it or not is totally up to them. It's not a podcast to push beliefs or anything like that. It's basically just presenting information. So we cover anything from ghosts to aliens to UFOs to forgotten civilizations to uh, manipulation in sports, like anything that's kind of like fringe topic
Right.
wise. So I cover a whole bunch of different things, near death experiences, and I just like talking to people with different experiences, different backgrounds, different research, and just getting the information out there. And I like that people can listen in, and it's like a grab bag show, so it doesn't really stick to one specific topic. So it's like every week you're getting something different, something fresh, and so you might hear Bigfoot one week, and then alien abduction the next week, and then the next week you're hearing
Love it.
about ghost hunting, and so it's a nice little mix of everything.
Yeah, all the fun stuff. We love that stuff since I was a kid. So, how did you get into this?
So I've always been into weird stuff, fringe stuff since I was little. Like I always liked the shows like Unsolved Mysteries and the X Files and all that kind of stuff. So always been fascinated with like aliens, Bigfoot, past ancient civilizations, stuff like that. And as I grew older, I just kind of stuck with it, and then I kind of fell out of it a little bit in high school because in high school you just want to fit in and be cool, and so I kind of just did my own thing then. But then a little bit after high school, I think 2008, 2009, I had a near death experience, and kind of changed my life and put me in a different direction and kind of becoming my true self. And through that, I came into this podcast, and I was sitting around one day and I was like, I don't really have any other hobbies except like video gaming and stuff. So I was like, what can I do in my free time that would, bring me some joy and some purpose? So I was like, oh, I've always been into like fringe topics, and I like X Files and all that stuff. So, and I listened to this radio show called Coast to Coast AM, and I kind of mimic my show after it, kind of. And I was like, I should probably make a show like that and just be like the coast to coast of the podcasting world. And so I set out on the journey to create What If They're Wrong, and it's been a blast ever since. I'm going on a year now, and I've interviewed tons of amazing guests and had some of my dream guests on, and just been really having a good time with it. And I love, like I said, picking people's brains and hearing what they've researched and what they've experienced. And even if I don't believe everything, I like to give people the chance to at least express it and put it out there. And um,
Hmm.
yeah, it's a fun time.
Yeah, definitely. So, tell me about your near death experience then. What happened there?
Yeah, so at the time, I would consider myself an atheist, and I didn't really believe in anything. I was just kind of like, whatever, you live, you die, and we're just meat sacks or whatever. So one night, just a random night, nothing special about it, I went to bed. Now, my brother and his now wife lived with me at the time, and I went to bed, and the only reason I know when I woke up because I had my brother take me to the hospital, and that was 3 a.m. And I was like just sleeping, normal, and all of a sudden it was like my consciousness kicked on. It's the only way I can describe it. And I could sense I was in like this black tunnel, like this dark tunnel. It's the only word I can describe it as. It was almost like in space, but in a tunnel kind of thing. I don't know. It's hard to put it to words, but and there was a real bright white light at the end of it. Like you always hear the light at the end of the tunnel when you die and stuff like that. And I was like, in my consciousness, I didn't see my body. I didn't know I was a body. It was just my brain kind of like talking to itself. And I was like, this is weird. And floating towards this bright white light, and it was super white, and it wasn't like the sun. I could actually look at it and it didn't hurt my eyes or anything. So I'm like, what is going on? I'm like kind of gravitating towards this light, and about halfway up um, towards this light, I just started feeling like intense love and peace and warmth, and just I can't even describe the feeling. It was something I don't think I'll ever feel on Earth, and just love and warmth, and like the world just shedded away. Like I had no care in the world, and just embracing this love and warmth. And so kept like getting pulled towards this light, and about three-quarters of the way up, I started seeing like black, grayish black silhouettes of like people. So I didn't see their face or what they were wearing or anything like that. It was just like a silhouette, and um, there was like three or four of them, and they started calling to me, and they were like, "You can come. It's okay. Don't be scared." And they just kept like repeating it, like, "Don't be scared. You can come. It's fine. Don't don't worry. Don't be scared." And I wasn't scared at all because that feeling of love and peace and warmth, and their voices were so angelic, for lack of a better term. It was like I knew them my entire life, but I had no clue what or who they were. Their voice was just so reassuring and so loving, and so I kept floating, or I say floating, but it's not really how it felt. It was more like getting pulled towards it, like gravitational pull. And they just kept calling out and saying that, and then something clicked in my consciousness, and I was like, no. And I yelled out to them, like, no, I'm not ready. This isn't my time. I have a mission on Earth. I'm not done yet. I need to go back. I just kept yelling, no, I'm not ready. Um, and then about five, maybe six times after I yelled this, I just felt this incredible force just like rocket me back into my body. And it wasn't like I saw myself going back into my body. It was just like my consciousness that was whatever floating or getting pulled was just like shot into my body. And then I woke up. And when I woke up, I was just like gasping for air. Like I was held underwater for a long time. And my heart was hurting like someone was crushing it. Like I can only describe it like someone had it in their hand and they were like squeezing real hard trying to pop it. And I was like, "Oh no, I'm having a heart attack." Like I didn't think much of the experience itself. Um, so I went and stumbled to my brother's room and was like, "Josh, you got to wake up." And he's like, "Bro, it's 3 in the morning or whatever." And I was like, "No, dude, I think I'm having a heart attack." And he reluctantly took me to the hospital, LGH, and they hooked me up to all these machines and this vest and stuff to monitor your heart, and uh, did all this blood work. And I was there for, at least a few hours. And finally, the doctor came in and was like, "Well, I went over all your blood work and your charts and all the heart tests and all." He said, "You're 100% healthy." And they discharged me, sent me home. And the next 3 or 4 days, I just felt like a light squeeze on my heart, like someone was like a stress ball kind of thing. And it didn't hurt like when I initially woke up, but it was just like constantly like feeling it getting lightly squeezed. And I was like, what the heck is going on? And then finally it faded away. And it wasn't until maybe a couple years later that I was like looking into near death experiences, and I was like, holy crap, I might have had one. So that was the experience. Nothing crazy like going through hell or anything like
Hmm.
that, but it was life changing. Like I changed my life. I became very spiritual, whereas before I didn't believe in anything, and started looking into conspiracies and started looking into spiritual stuff, and just really changed my entire life. And I, I used to listen to a lot of like rap and gangster rap and stuff like that, and totally like phased away from that and started listening to like a ton of reggae and ton of like uplifting stuff and
Right.
like positive message stuff, and just completely changed my whole being. And it was wild,
I
like the
can imagine.
change,
Yeah.
because I realized like we have a purpose here and we have a higher calling, and there is something beyond this life. And um, yeah, it's just very eye opening. I start seeing things differently now. Like I look at the big picture more. I don't get as stressed out by the smaller things. And um, I'm human, so there are times where I'm like, dang it, this light's been red forever. I want to go, and all this traffic sucks. I'm stuck here. But in the main, uh, mostly I don't let stuff like that bother me anymore, and I just kind of let it go. And I made a vow to myself. I know on New Year's Eve, a lot of people make like New Year's Eve resolutions where they say they won't do something or whatever. So like, I think it was a couple of years ago, I was like, "What's my New Year's resolution going to be?" And I said it's going to be that I'm not going to argue with people on Facebook or Instagram or wherever. I was like, I'm not going to do it. Like, you can't change people's minds. It's just a waste of time and energy, and you just get mad and upset, and nothing happens. So I was like, I'm not going to do it. And I haven't done it since. Like, I will not engage in negative stuff. So, and it's made my life better too. It's like, I don't get pissed off at arguing with someone and like trying to text real fast to like reply. And I don't care. Like, doesn't matter. You believe what you want. I'm gonna believe what I want. And
Yeah.
so that
Exactly.
was my experience.
Yeah. Sounds really interesting. You spoke to other people who had also near-death experiences.
Yes, I have. I've spoken with a few. I've interviewed a few on my show. Um, Kathy McDaniel was probably my favorite because this lady had quite the experience. She went to hell and then went to heaven afterwards, and was told that it's not her time yet, and was sent back to her body again. And
Hmm.
now she wrote a book, and is going on podcasts and different things to share her experience. And it's all a figuring out. Like it's not something you just know what you're supposed to do. Like I don't know what my mission is here. I just know that my consciousness was saying that I'm not done here. And maybe my podcast is part of
I
my
was just
mission.
thinking that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Maybe.
Cause yeah, it's just weird because I'm still trying to figure out what the heck I'm supposed to do. Like I don't think we're really supposed to know. I think we're just supposed to find it out. Like I think life is like a a lesson. Like when you're a kid, your parents have to teach you stuff and you have to learn,
Hmm.
and you have to go through experiences to know, like, oh, if I touch the stove when it's hot, I'm going to burn my hand, like that type of lesson. And I think life's the same way. Like you got to learn lessons, and the key is to learn from them and change going forward and not falling into the same pattern. Because a lot of people, they fall into the same pattern, like whether it's with relationships or drugs or whatever. And I think the key is to realize what you just experienced and then change to be better yourself. So I always try to better myself going forward. And
Hmm.
uh I don't know, it's just experience.
Yeah, definitely. You gotta learn it as you go. I mean, these days you can find everything on the internet, so there's plenty of opportunities to try things out. Yeah, maybe you have an inkling to do, like podcasting or knitting, whatever. Try it out and you'll see. For me personally, it's quite interesting because some of the things that I end up doing in my life, they are like a really big part of my life. When I first encountered them, I had a feeling like this is it. I want to learn more about it. I want to do this, whether it's playing guitar, calisthenics, stuff like that. Even with some of this paranormal stuff, I was always drawn to that. And every time that I had this feeling like this is something I want to pursue, now looking back, it really played a major role in my life.
Yeah, and I think we get those callings, and you just have to be in tune with your mind and your intuition. I think we're given intuition for a reason. So, like,
Yeah.
there's certain things where, like you said, you get into exercise or whatever, and if that is what lights your spark and creates your like passion, then you should totally dive into that. And the other people have different passions. Like maybe you're the best woodworker and you can build like awesome furniture and stuff like that, and you enjoy doing that, and that's your like
Hmm.
fire or your spark. Then you need to dive into that and spend whatever free time you have like working on that and honing that. And I think the universe will help you. Like, I don't believe in The Secret. There's this thing called The Secret where like
Yeah.
you just think about something and it'll come into existence for you. I don't believe that you can just sit and think about something and it happens or whatever. I think you have to actually take steps and take action. And then if it's the right action for you, then the universe will assist. And um, it's the same thing for like, I always use the basketball analogy. Like, I used to watch Allen Iverson play live, and you could just tell when he had a great game, it was like the universe was tapping into him and letting him hit every basket. And then there was other nights where it just wasn't going his way. Or same thing, I like to write, and there's days when I go to write and it's so hard and nothing comes out, and I just waste a bunch of time just staring at the screen. But then there's other times where I'm just like writing pages and pages, and I'm like, how the hell did I do that? It's like I'm not even there. It's like it's
Yeah.
channeled through me basically. And so yeah, I think it's all about finding your passion, finding what sparks you, and going towards that. And it's okay to fail. Like I've tried things and they haven't worked out, and you just keep going forward, and something will eventually stick. So before my podcast, I was trying to start a video game website where I did like video game news and stuff like that, and it didn't work. I didn't get like any views. Nothing was working out. Everything seemed hard to do, and so I stopped. And I was like, something's telling me this is not right for me. So I switched to the podcast thing, and it's been like, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's like everything has been falling in line, falling in place. I've hooked up with the right people. I've through them I've got connections to other people, and then I just keep putting in the work, and it doesn't seem like I have a ton of resistance. Like I still have to do the work, but
Hmm.
um, it's almost like the universe is like helping me along this process and pushing me forward. And here I am a year later, and um, thousands of downloads and all these great connections with people like you and other guests that I've had on, and it's just been quite the experience. So I guess to say for your listeners out there, like don't give up on your passions and your and whatever sparks you. Like really go for it and dive into it. And if something has a lot of resistance and it's not working out for you, it's okay to stop and go try something else.
That's
Like you
true.
don't have to keep pushing forward and it be super hard. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's just how I view living.
Yeah, I agree. I totally feel like the universe does conspire in your favor many times when you're on the right path. And when it comes to the secret, yeah, you're right. There was a bit of a misconception that many people have that that you can just think about something and it manifests itself. Whilst I do believe in this manifestation, I don't think it's not as simple as that. Just simply just think about it, because at the end of the day, your conscious mind, your thinking mind, it's only like 5% of your life. The rest is run by your subconscious. So it's more about the subconscious. What's that doing, and what kind of beliefs do you have there? Because at the end of the day, you can have a belief that you don't deserve love, for example, which is quite common. I'm not worthy, right? You can have that in your subconscious, but you can tell consciously yourself that I do deserve love. You can know it on an intellectual level, but because you have that subconscious belief, um, that's what's gonna manifest your reality, basically. And obviously, there's also it's more about aligning yourself with what you really want. That's a better way of saying it, rather than you just have to think about it. Because let's say if you want to be a musician, well, then you're gonna get a guitar, you're gonna practice, you're gonna think about it, you're gonna write songs, and this way you align with your goal to being a good musician, as opposed to just thinking something. Obviously, thinking that has also its role, but there's also more steps to it, like you said. I think a better source for my listeners, or for you, if you want to look into it, is Neville Goddard, and maybe even Abraham Hicks. These kinds of people, they uh, explain things a little bit better than in The Secret. Actually, I've spoken to one of the, people who, yeah, I think he co-wrote a book with one of the people that were behind the documentary The Secret, and he also said that, yeah, they missed out the action, how important that is in a movie.
Yeah, and I think it so there's this theory that everything that ever is, will, and can be, or whatever, all the information of all time is in this, like, I don't know how else to describe it except for like a this cloud, and it's called universal consciousness or whatever. And there's a theory that you can tap into that, and that's where in the theory that's where they believe that people like Nikola Tesla and Albert Einstein and a lot of other geniuses, they actually tap into this universal consciousness, and that's how they get all these ideas and theories and all the stuff that they bring out, that to people it's like, oh man, they're so intelligent, and they are, but um, it- you know, there might be that, you know, cloud that kind of like the iCloud. If you have an iPhone or whatever, you can put all your stuff on the iCloud or whatever. And um, maybe there is like a universal iCloud that you can, if you know how to do it, you can tap into it. And um, same thing for like, if you follow your passion, maybe that's stored in the iCloud and it's like waiting for you to download that. So it's like
Yeah.
downloading that consciousness. And there's been many people who've talked about feeling like they've got a download when they've come up with a bright idea, or um, it just seems like some of these things come out of nowhere. But maybe there is something to that theory where um, all that's there for your taking, but you have to take the action towards getting that. So
Hmm.
yeah, like you said, it's not just sitting there. It's you gotta do something. You can't just sit in your on your couch and be like, oh, I won $1 million, because $1 million is not going to fall out of your ceiling and onto your lap. Like,
Yeah.
you got to do something to get that.
Yeah, that's true. And that what you say about the universal consciousness and everything existing somewhere already, whether it's past, present, future, everything, and that seems to be the case, really. Because just like you have been looking into so many, you know, areas of what people call the paranormal, you know, from abductions, near-death experiences, psychic abilities, and this seems to be a solution which might explain most of it. Because at the end of the day, we are all trying to figure out some kind of a model of the universe which will explain what we are seeing. The mechanistic reductionist model, which says it's all just about matter, that really shoves everything and that you talk about on your podcast, for example. It shoves it under the rug and says it's just nonsense. And that's just such a cheaper explanation, So that doesn't seem to be right. But if you turn things around, and there are scientists who are talking about this model, for example, Donald Hoffman, he talks a lot about this, where he suggests that consciousness is fundamental and space-time arises out of it. So it switches things around rather than saying that within the universe, at some point, consciousness arises spontaneously. It doesn't really have any big purpose in it. And even things like remote viewing, they kind of confirm this. Because for those people who don't know what remote viewing is, there was even a secret CIA program researching this, which was pretty successful actually, where people can perceive things that are very far away from them, also both in space and time. For example, there was one remote viewing session where they were looking at a place somewhere in the States, and they get it right, really. But there was some kind of in the remote viewing session, they said there was some kind of tanks in that place, but there weren't any at that time. A while later, this was like in the 70s, I think, 70s. A while later, they had a look at some old photos from the town, and turns out in that spot there were really big water tanks in the 1930s. So the remote viewer saw it the way it was in the past, not as it was right now. So saying that all the information is out there, stored somewhere, maybe holographically, somewhere in whatever underlies space and time, that might be quite correct. Obviously, it needs lots of research, but it definitely explains the things a bit better.
Yeah, and you have to ask yourself for any of the like naysayers out there, because there are people that are like, oh, that's a bunch of nonsense or whatever. Like all this paranormal woo-woo stuff is nonsense. But you have to ask yourself, if it's complete nonsense, why is our government using it? Why are they making programs for this remote viewing? If there is nothing there and it's all nonsense, then why would the government be involved with that? Why would they
Yeah, for
use
decades.
that? And they've been using it, yeah, for a long time. So, and I've heard they've used it to solve crimes and all kinds of other stuff. So, there's to me, there's got to be something there. Like, if it was all nonsense, then, like I said, I don't see why they would make a program for it. It just wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
they
that's
have all
true.
these black ops programs and stuff like that, like MK
Oh yeah,
Ultra and all this stuff that the normal person, and I say normal as like the person who's not into this stuff, um, doesn't really know about or doesn't research into, so they don't really know. And then when you tell someone about these things and they're like, I had no idea. Like one of my first episodes was CERN, the Large Hadron Collider,
mm-hmm.
and all the weird nonsense going on there. And a lot of people at work that listen to my show and other people that I've talked to, that they're like, I didn't even know CERN existed. I didn't even know what it was. And you just opened my eyes. And a lot of them are like, yeah, it sounds like something freaking weird is going down there. Like the official story doesn't make any sense, and um, so it just goes to show, like, if you're not awake to these things and you don't research into these things, it doesn't mean they're not there. They don't exist, because they do.
Yeah, yeah. People in general should be more aware of what they don't know, because usually people work from an assumption that they have enough information to make a decision, but it's most of the time not the case. Like you were saying, with the programs, like God knows what kind of some secret programs they are running right now. But for example, this remote viewing program has been running since from the 70s till the 90s. It created, there were plenty of studies which showed, in fact, some of the studies were so significant that they were just as powerful as the study that got the guy who found the Higgs boson. He got Nobel Prize for it. So they were just as powerful, those studies. Yet no one is denying the existence of the Higgs boson, but people still think that remote viewing is nonsense. And the Soviets were doing the same at the same time.
Yeah, and then you have the whole UFO thing. It's like
Yeah,
back in the day, it was like you were a crazy tinfoil hat person if you believed in UFOs, and oh, they don't exist. It's just weather phenomenon, or there's just weather balloons or whatever. And now look, the government is releasing tons of documents, and they're coming out and saying, hey, yeah, we don't know what these things are. Um, there are objects that were in the sky that we just don't have an answer to. And so it just goes to show, like, um, just because things happen, like being called crazy, but then here we are decades later, and it's like, see, told you so. Like we've been talking about this
yeah,
for a while now, and now the actual government is coming out saying, yeah, yeah, you're on to something.
yeah. I'm really glad that we are finally at this point where we can say there's something really going on. There's no doubt about it. Obviously, people are, like I said, they think they know. They work from information that they gathered like years ago, or something they heard from someone. The fact is, yeah, like you said, the government finally admitted that UFOs are real. Now it's not a question whether they exist or not, but what they actually are. And
Yeah, and I think
so
I
far,
saw,
we don't know.
yeah, and I saw a bunch of stuff online yesterday that was like, I think it was over Egypt. There was all these weird lights, and it almost looked uh like spaceship, like a mothership. I don't know if you've seen those photos, but
No,
you could probably look online. But yeah, there are tons of pictures from Egypt going around yesterday that if I had to guess or say, it looks like the spaceship from like um what's that movie? Independence Day. Like
right.
right, yeah, it looked like that, like right beyond the clouds. So there was like clouds, and but they weren't like thick clouds, and then you could see all these lights, and if you kind of like piece all the lights together, it definitely looks like some type of like spacecraft. Now
Who
I don't
knows?
know how
I'm not.
true those pictures are, but
Yeah, because
but
these days it's very easy to fake something like that.
yeah.
So it could be, but
Yeah, I
I
don't
don't
know.
know.
I haven't researched into it. I just saw it going around yesterday,
Yeah,
so I guess I'll have to start looking into that and make sure it's real. But if it is real, it's pretty wild.
yeah. But these days, it's also another good thing that we have actually good data to work with. That it's not like in the past, some dude, just took a picture of something in his backyard. But now we have data that's very robust, comes from Navy warships, that's corroborative. So it's not just one camera sensing something, but it's, you got FLIR, you got radar, all confirming the same. And you get also visual contact with those things. So it's a very different situation these days.
Yeah, and I feel like we're at this point where the government can no longer cover it up. Like they had a good chance back in the day because we didn't really have the internet or cell phones, smartphones, and all
Hmm.
that stuff. So it was easier to keep it under wraps and keep people from looking into it and researching. But I think now we're at a point where there's not really a lot that they can hide from us anymore. Um, and we saw that with the whole pandemic too, is like a lot of misinformation was going around on both sides. And, stuff that they were saying in the beginning turned out to not be so true
Yeah,
and stuff like that. So it's like, you really got to be careful what you believe in and what you just because you hear it on the mainstream news doesn't mean it's true. So it's
yeah,
definitely
definitely.
wise to do your own research and take from both sides. Don't just I think you get also this kind of fanatical conspiracy too, is like people who get real deep down into conspiracies, they only look at that side and uh I forget what it's called, like confirmation bias or whatever, where
Yeah,
they only listen to their own source and don't hear the other side. So I think it's important to kind of keep open to both sides. Even if you don't agree with the other side, at least look into it a little bit and see, because you might be like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense," or "Oh no, I read the other side, but it doesn't make any sense. So now I believe this side more." So um, I just think doing your own due diligence really matters these days.
yeah, definitely. You gotta look at both sides and come to it with an open mind and try to actually figure out what's going on, rather than just confirm your own biases and question everything, both sides all the time. That's the only way how you can actually find the truth, if that's what you want, what you really want.
Yeah, and that's the title of my show, What If They're Wrong? It's kind of all encompassing. It could
Yeah,
be what if the mainstream's wrong or what if the conspiracy people are wrong? Like it's uh it's all up to you as an individual in the end because no one can tell you what to believe or how to believe unless they brainwash you, which I hope doesn't happen to anyone. Um, but yeah, it's all about being informed and making your own decision, your own conclusion. Um, I don't like when we're told that we have to do something. Um, it's just not in my nature. Like, I want to be able to have the option. If you present good information and it makes sense, then yeah, I'll follow you. I'll believe you. But if you're contradicting yourself or if you're making up stuff, then I can't really follow you.
yeah, definitely. I mean, if someone's trying to force you into something or into believing something, there's probably some kind of agenda going on. It's probably not in your favor. I mean,
Yeah, I've been trying to interview someone from a cult, but I haven't had a
yeah.
chance. There's a cult that is not too far from where I live, and I reached out to them and was like, "Hey, can I interview you about your organization?" I didn't say cult because I didn't want to like
Yeah.
make them mad or whatever.
Yeah, obviously.
And they emailed me back and were like, "We can talk to you, but off the record, not recorded." And they didn't want to they didn't want to be heard. So, um, but
What kind
yeah,
of a
it's
cult
basic.
is it?
So it's like a farm cult. I don't even know how to describe it, but basically, it's not that far from me. I think it's within like 40 minutes drive of me, and it basically you can come work on this farm and follow their rules. And I think I heard from someone that you have to um, discard your belongings and your name, and they give you a new name for the community. And basically, you work on the farm or contribute however you can contribute. Um, they also have a deli where you can go and eat, and everyday people, like normal people that aren't in the cult, can go and eat there. And
Hmm.
I heard the food's actually really good. just don't get caught in the in the trap.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, they have like a deli, they sell stuff, they farm, and yeah, it might not be a bad cult, but it definitely seems like a cult. Um, I don't know if every cult has to be bad, but
Not necessarily.
but I wanted to interview them because I wanted to get an idea of, what goes on. How does this come about and the people that follow it and stuff like that. But they denied my interview, so I'm gonna keep trying to find people, and I plan on doing an episode on doomsday cults and how people get sucked into
Mm.
those, and the whole thing behind doomsday cults, and like Jonestown and Heaven's Gate and all that stuff, where it gets so deep that people are willing to kill themselves for the cause of the church or the cult or whatever. I just
Yeah.
find it very interesting. I know it's a little more true crime than like paranormal, but um, still, it's very interesting to me, and I would like to cover it at some point.
Yeah, it is a good insight in how our psyche works, really. So, to be honest, I wasn't in a cult, but there was this one book that a friend of mine gave me, and at the time I was like, "Oh man, this kind of makes sense, really," you know. But it's always they try to manipulate you into believing something through, um, how to say it properly, by
Through like
exploiting some of your
fear.
weaknesses. Like the fact that you don't know much about a certain topic, then they tell you not to research that topic so you don't find out. You know, and this was the Falun Gong. It was because I was getting into qigong at that point. I was big into martial arts, and yeah, I was reading. And I was like, okay, I tried some of the exercises, but then when I actually had a look at what the real qigong is, traditional Chinese, Taoist, Buddhist, it's like just have a lot of nonsense, really.
Yeah, they prey off of your fear and what you're lacking. I feel
Yeah,
like a lot of people, well, I don't know, I'm not an expert or anything, but just my opinion is people who get sucked into cults, I think, usually are like down on life. They're kind of at their low point. They most likely probably don't have strong family connection. So when they get a group that will accept them and treat them as family, it's easier for them to let their guard down and kind of just follow along. And like I said earlier with high school, and you just want to be accepted, you just want friends, and um, so I feel like if you don't have a strong like backbone or a strong self-esteem, then it's easy to fall into different things, and not just cults
yeah,
either. Like there's people who get used by other people because they don't set boundaries for themselves, or they don't have the enough self-esteem or self-respect to stand up for themselves, or put a limit on whatever. Abusive relationships are another thing, and um, it's just like, I don't know. Like you said, they prey on the weak, and they prey on who they think would be easily manipulated.
yeah. At the end of the day, when you were talking about your near-death experience and you felt the love and connection there, that's what every human being really wants in life. More, if if not all, then definitely the vast majority of our actions are just to get that somehow. But most people don't realize that we already have that within us. It's just a matter of figuring out how to peel off all the layers that we have around our hearts and access it. So that, like you said, when someone's lost in their lives and doesn't have good connections, family, friends, otherwise, then they're really susceptible to these kinds of cults, which do offer like a sense of belonging and connection and love, even though it's false.
Yeah, and I'm learning because I honestly am not too good at this. Is like helping. I mean, I help other people, but I don't think I do it enough. So I'm really trying to change myself to helping others more and being less like selfish and um, caring about others more than just caring about myself. Um, so like I try to do more things for other people that I normally wouldn't do. Like I'll buy, like the other day, for instance, the guy at work, young kid, um, he's like, I don't have lunch. I don't know what I'm gonna do or whatever. So I ended up buying him lunch, and it's not big. It didn't cost me a lot of money, but
Why not?
um, it probably made his day because he was like stressing out about how he's going to eat, and we get hungry, and um, so doing doing things like that. And then another guy at my work was diagnosed with cancer, and he's in the process of fighting it. So I set up a donation page for him, and we've raised a couple $1,000s and stuff like that. Just like going outside of myself and trying to be more of a giver than a taker. And I feel like I've learned that it actually feels better to help others than to do something for yourself or to, you know, get something for yourself. Like that feeling of giving someone a gift and seeing them light up or smile or helping someone out when they need help, like whether it's moving or, with whatever they're doing. And I just feel like that's kind of more what we're supposed to be doing as humans on Earth, um, and yeah, not being so self-minded, absorbed, and in our ego so much. And I think that's a big problem these days. Is you got a lot of ego-driven people, a lot of those people that want to be TikTok famous or they want their 5 minutes on
Yeah.
TV um, and you always see stuff like that, but you don't really see a whole lot of like the giving, the people who are out there at the soup kitchens and the people who are helping their neighbor after they've lost a loved one or something like that. And I think that's the true gift. Um, that, so if you're feeling like down or depressed or anything like that, try to start just giving to others, helping others, and I'm finding that works a lot for me.
Yeah, it's a good thing to do. Like you said, there's too much ego, and ego puts like a big boundary between you and other people. But love and compassion is what breaks down that barrier. So it's no longer just you, but you're part of something bigger.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, it's all about learning, and I'm still learning. I'm not trying to claim I'm perfect or anything. I'm far from it. I'm just another human being like everyone else, and I
Yeah,
still have my battles. And um, but yeah, it's been quite the journey since about 2008, 2009. Uh, Before that, I was just kind of reckless and young and stupid. And
yeah, just like everyone.
yeah, but I think it's all part of the process, all part of the learning experience. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, there are some people that never grow out of it, and there's some people who go down a dark path and don't get to get out of it, or they overdose or they commit suicide or whatever the case may
Or
be.
become
And
the leader of the World Economic Forum.
yeah, or they become Klaus Schwab.
Yeah, the
And
ultimate Bond villain.
yes, and they want you to own nothing and be happy about it and eat
Horrible
crickets.
stuff. Yeah, what the hell. But anyway, uh, back to the UFO stuff, because you said you had some really good guests on your podcast. So tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, so we'll shift to the UFO and abduction phenomenon. Something I'm really, really into. I've been reading tons of books on it, been listening to tons of stuff about it. I interviewed, well, the first one, her name was Adrian, and she had messaged me. through my show and was like, "Hey, I don't know how I feel about it, but I would like to get my abduction story out." And I was like, "Yes, let's do it." I was like, you know, we'll just record it and then I can edit out whatever you want. I was like, I just want you to be comfortable. I don't want you to feel pressured or like that you have to say something you don't want to say, and just kind of really making her feel like she can talk without being judged. And so she came on the show and we were talking, and she had got abducted while she was pregnant. I forget how far along she was, like 6, 7 months maybe. Um, so she had this experience where she got abducted, taken aboard a what I would guess is spacecraft, and they started doing examinations on her. And one of those examinations was this big long needle that they shoved into her stomach to where the
Mm-hmm.
uh, baby fetus was, and they were communicating with her and basically telling her like this has to happen. Um, you'll find out in the future or whatever. And so that traumatizing experience happened, and I think she encountered two different beings. There was like the typical gray, and then there was a taller, like mantoid type being that seemed to be the doctor, for lack of a better term. And the grays were kind of just the worker bees, the nurses or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so they did all these. They sent her back home, and then she uh, she was able to recall this event, and so she came on the show, talked about a very emotional interview. Um, I highly recommend anyone that is listening to go listen to the Adrian episode I have. Um, a very very nice lady, and I could sense by talking to her because I could see her. My podcast is audio only, but I see my guests, and
Mm-hmm.
I could tell she was very traumatized. She was not making it up. Um, she was crying at certain points, and you could just tell that she had been through a really crazy experience, and she was worried about her daughter or whatever. Well, then she had her child, and she said like the child's development seemed very fast compared to other children, and she didn't know if that was due to the experiments that were taking place on her, because like she said her daughter was able to walk before a lot of the other kids in her class, was more intelligent as far as like schoolwork and stuff like that. And um, it's very interesting. And I really enjoyed that. It might be my favorite episode just because I love the whole abduction phenomena and being able to talk to. So then it was shortly after that I received another message from another girl named Nicole, and she was like, I was doing the laundry and I was listening to your podcast and I heard the Adrian episode, and she said I had to put down everything and walk outside because I had this almost the same exact experience as what Adrian went through. So I was like, yes, you have to come on. We got to talk about this. And I was like, I want to connect you with Adrian so you guys can talk about your experiences, because I think it would help that, if you guys had the same type of experience, you could probably talk to each other, figure out more details, find out maybe some reason why, or at least be able to feel like you're not alone. And so I interviewed her. She had the same type of experience. She got taken aboard some type of craft. Um, these beings did all these tests, did the same needle to the stomach type of thing, whatever experiment that is, messing with the fetus. And um, she had went through all that, and then later on, she had a couple different experiences after the abduction. So she had, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, so I'm sorry if you'll have to listen to the Nicole interview,
Always.
but um, something about she had like a scar or a bloody mark on her belly button. Um, and she thinks that that might have been due to the procedure that they did. And she said she doesn't recall ever getting like scratched there or like bumping into anything on her stomach or anything like that. And then she had some other I can't remember off the top of my head, but some other thing happened after the fact that she's like something happened, like this isn't right. And so I was like the whole time I'm in this interview with both of them, my mouth is open. I'm just like this is incredible. Like, and so I was like I gave them each their contact information. I don't know if they ended up talking to each other. I hope they did, but it's just very interesting. And then I talked to L.A. Marzoli, who dives into the whole abduction phenomena as well. He comes at it more on a religious aspect, which I'm starting to fall in line with a little bit more, the religious side of abductions. But just being able to talk to two people who had a traumatic abduction type experience was just incredible. And I thank them a million times for being vulnerable enough to come on and talk about it because I know it's not easy because a lot of people would just call them crazy or say they just had a dream or whatever. But I from their reaction and their emotions, it's not a reaction from just a dream, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Well, even John Mack, who researched this subject, for those who don't know, he was a Harvard psychiatrist. He wrote literally an entire book about nightmares. So if there was someone who could distinguish this was some kind of a real experience or just a nightmare, it was him. And he said it's definitely not a nightmare. You don't get a strong trauma um, response out of just a nightmare. And many of these people even have PTSD afterwards. So that's definitely something else going on.
Yeah, and then you have Dr. Jacobs. I read a lot of his stuff too. He does hypnotic regression on people who think they've had an abduction, and he's done hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of uh, interviews and regressions with people who think they might have been abducted. And there's a lot of similarities there. There's a lot of questions that are brought up because it's like the more I dive into the alien abduction phenomenon, the more questions I have. It's like I try to find answers, but then I have more questions, and it's like
Yeah.
um, I kind of have an idea of what it's all about, but I'm not 100% sure because there's always something that comes up that contradicts that or that makes me wonder. So it's like I think I have a full grasp on the alien abduction thing, but I can't 100% piece it together. And obviously, there's researchers a lot more diverse or research than me that still haven't figured it out either. But there's a lot of theories out there. So,
Yeah. So what's your current opinion about this? Like what's going on there?
so my thought is, and I have to start by saying I'm not a religious person. Um, I don't go to church. I am spiritual. I believe in a higher being. I believe that you should be as good a person as you can. Um, but I do think that the ancient texts and the Bible and other things play into the whole abduction phenomenon. But I think this is my opinion. I think it's been misconstrued. I think, how do I put this? So there's this tale about the Anunnaki where they come down, they uh, did genetic manipulation on primitive human type beings to create modern humans to do their biddings or whatever. Now, I'm not saying that I'm an ancient astronaut theorist or Anunnaki believer or anything, but I think there was at some point this console of beings, whether they were from another dimension or from outer space. I think it's another dimension. Um, I think there's points in time where the veil between our reality and another dimension or another reality kind of like thins and then things are able to pass through. And I think at some point in the past, there was this divine council that came, manipulated a primitive type human like the Neanderthal to create modern humans. Um, I think the fallen ones, the fallen angels of the Bible, is the same thing, just described differently. Um, and I think you had a council, and this God person um, was like the head of the council, kind of like Captain Kirk on Star Trek is like the head of the Starship Enterprise, but there's a bunch of different like captains and stuff like that. So you had like a rebellion, and I think it said a third of the angels, quote unquote angels, came down to Earth and mingled with the women of men and created the Nephilim and all that. So I think it all ties in together, and I think the abduction phenomenon is the fallen ones, whatever they um, other dimensional beings, um, are conducting experiments. I think they're trying to create a hybrid race for whatever purpose. Maybe there will be another cataclysm on Earth, like the flood, um, and humans will be pretty much wiped out, and they'll use this hybrid being to repopulate the planet, um, to kind of play that role of God. Uh, and I think there is another concerted effort to go against that as well. And I think it's all boils down to there's a spiritual warfare going on. And I say that in the most non-religious way. um, because I know a lot of people like instantly be like, "Oh, you're just talking like a Christian or whatever," and that's totally not where I'm coming from. Um, Not that I think Christianity is wrong or anything, but I think it's just man's interpretation of events that transpired. And I think there's a lot in our past that we don't know about or haven't been able to hear about. Because I think some of our world leaders and the elites have documentation that they won't share with us. Um, I think the Vatican is one of them. I think they have a bunch of books and scrolls and stuff underneath the Vatican that will never see the
Oh, hey,
light of
God
day.
knows what's there.
Yeah. So I think they know a lot. You had the Library of Alexandria that burned down, so we lost a lot of stuff there. And yeah, so I think the abduction thing, while I'm not 100% sure, I'm pretty sure it has to do with some type of spiritual warfare going on between a good entity and a not so good entity. Um, and I consider the abduction phenomenon to be interdimensional, and I think it explains why these alien beings are able to pull people out through their windows without the window open, or up through the roof without the roof being opened, obviously. Um, and then the whole missing time. There's a whole thing about missing time where people get abducted. They should have been home at 12 o'clock, but they end up getting home at like 3 o'clock. And they're like, what happened to those 3 hours? They have no idea. And there's plenty of accounts of missing time. And I think that's all due to the interdimensionality of it. I think they found a way to manipulate space time and these portals that take you from one place to another. I could say dimensions because there's no other word. And I think they use that, and I think it also explains why UFOs seem to like maneuver like nothing we've ever seen, and that they can disappear just like at the drop of a hat. And the interdimensional thing just makes a lot more sense to me than they're from outer space on some other planet. Now they could be from another planet, but use interdimensional travel to get here,
Yep.
and that could be. I'm not closed off to that, but I just don't believe that they're flying in spaceships across space from one planet to this planet, and just my personal belief, I don't believe that. And the crazy thing is, what is going on with this hybrid program? And I don't think it's going to be good for us.
Well, we shall see. That's one
Yeah.
thing. But I remember I watched one of Preston Dennett's videos. He was on my podcast this year, and he mentioned one case where a woman had I think it was like a telepathic communication with a grey alien, and he explained to her that throughout the thousands, maybe millions of years, I don't know how old the civilization is, they really love their science and they love exploring the universe. So they became a spacefaring civilization, and they started to genetically manipulating themselves to be better adapted to very long travels throughout the cosmos. Which, by the way, I'm not saying that it's a again like it's a simple explanation, like saying they're just from another planet. They might be, but as I mentioned, it was one of the themes of my science fiction book, Ascension. There are more advanced civilizations going to have a very different grasp on reality and how the universe works, and also ways how to exploit it. So that's when maybe some of the interdimensional effects of it that we are seeing come into place. So supposedly, this alien told her that they basically manipulate yeah, alter their genes to be more adapted to the long space flights. They usually just lived alone, and they basically lost their ability to feel. It was just all about the intellect, and they weren't able to reproduce normally anymore. And now they kind of found out that there might be a mistake, and they want some of their, for lack of better words, humanness back. So that's why there's possibly this kind of program going on. How true it is, I don't know.
Yeah, what really disturbs me with the abduction thing from all the research I've done into it is the whole fact of these hybrid children. And
That's
a
pretty
lot of these
creepy.
hybrid children look really sick. They look like they're dying. They look like they have no emotion. Um, the fact that the alien beings tell them, tell the whoever gets abducted, they tell them, you need to hold this child close to your chest, close to your heart. This child needs you to hold it and to love it and love on it and stuff like that. And the whole thing, I don't know the answers to it, but it just really makes me wonder. It makes me scratch my head, and it's the one piece of the puzzle that I just can't grasp. Maybe I'm just not smart enough, but it's like, why are they creating these hybrids, but these hybrids are like sick or dying or need the human interaction, but the human can only be there for a short time, and then they have to return them back to their normal life. And then the some accounts you'll hear that the lady had a baby, and then all of a sudden wasn't pregnant anymore, and then they get abducted like years later and see a child and is told that this child is theirs. It was taken from them and raised on the ship or on the other planet or whatever. And I don't know, the whole hybrid race thing, the beings that they're creating is like the biggest mystery to me. And um, I don't know. Uh, I hope it's not for something bad, like they're gonna wipe us all out at some point, or.
That
But
seems
I
pretty
feel like if they
unlikely.
were gonna wipe us out, they would have done that already. So,
Exactly. Yeah,
so I don't know.
there's no reason for us for them to wait for us to get hypersonic nuclear weapons and all that stuff when they could have wiped us very easily like 100 years ago. So, and when it comes to the hybrids, well, I've heard that in many cases they were actually quite beautiful, very large eyes, not that much hair, but that's very subjective. And also, if you look at a gray alien, how that thing looks, and if you try to imagine something that's half half, then yeah, it's probably not going to look like a super healthy human being. It's one thing. And yeah, who knows? Speaking of this, you just mentioned when an embryo just goes missing, like 7 months into the pregnancy or so. Because I've heard conflicting things from different researchers. Some people say that there are some medical records that show that the fetus went missing. It's later in the pregnancy, and some people say there's no real evidence like that. What do you think?
Um, I don't know, to be honest with you. I've just heard that that was a case. Now there's no way to know for sure if the woman didn't get like an abortion or, um, had the baby and then said that she didn't have it. I don't know, but Um, yeah, I don't have any like confirming things, but I've just heard of accounts where that has happened. And it seems
Mm-hmm.
to be like not so late in the pregnancy is when they talk about losing it. Like, I think what I've heard is like 3, 4 months in to the
Mm-hmm.
pregnancy is usually when uh, the child is taken, if it's taken. But then there's other times where um, I've heard accounts of guys who've had to have sexual relations with female looking aliens and um, tales about how they were abducted later on and shown the child that they produced through these sexual encounters with the female alien or whatever. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what. I don't know what's real, what's not. It's one of those weird things where you can. There's some accounts where it's like to me undeniable that something happened, but then other accounts that are like sounds a little too fantasized. Like
Yeah.
some accounts that sound like someone's just trying to get attention, but then there's other ones like Adrian, who I interviewed, where it's just like a weird traumatic experience. And uh, a lot of the abductees that seem more real, they're the type of people who don't really want the fame. They're not looking to get famous. They a lot of them don't really want to talk about their experience or want to relive the experience. I know for Dr. Jacobs, who hypnotizes people, he's had troubles trying to get people to get on board and relive some
Mm-hmm.
of these accounts because the person's like, I don't know if I want to live or go through that again in my mind. And there's a lot of people that are like, maybe I'm better off not knowing what happened.
Yeah.
So it's those type of accounts that I take more to heart than people who talk about, oh, I went on an alien ship and we flew around the galaxy to different planets and stuff like that. That stuff sounds a little out there for me, but who am I to say what's real experience and not? But
That's true.
I
You gotta be
I try to
careful.
focus more on the ones like I said, like Adrian's account, like the people who have been hypnotized to recall events, people who have marks on their body that they have no explanation of why they're there, and the marks look similar to other people who have those marks. Like there's a famous scoop mark, and I actually am friends and talk with a guy who has a scoop mark. He doesn't recall his abduction. Um, I don't know if he's planning on getting hypnotized or whatever, but yeah, there's certain things like that, like the missing time. Uh, like, how do you account for that? Like, when someone's
Yeah,
parents are like, "Why weren't you home? It's 7 o'clock at night. You're supposed to be home at 5." And the child's like, "What are you talking about? I just left the school to come home." Like, where do you account those extra 2 hours? Like, that kind of stuff really like makes me scratch my head, makes me like believe what happened.
yeah. There are definitely some really good cases out there. If one is willing to have a look into them. Whilst you were talking and talking about the sexual encounters, I remember not so long ago I saw a really good video about the case of, hopefully I'm not butchering the name, Anton Villas Boas from Brazil, who on his farm he encountered a UFO, some beings. He had a sexual encounter with a bit peculiar looking woman. And what's strange about this case is that he ended up with radiation poisoning afterwards, or something that really looked like it. And it's like, how the hell do you get radiation poisoning on a freaking farm in Brazil?
Yeah.
Come on. Now, or the case of Travis Walton when he went missing for 5 days straight, and each one of them went for a lie detector, and they, upon later inspection, they found out that none of them was lying.
Yeah, same with Benny and Barney Hill, like
Yeah,
or Betty and Barney Hill. Both passed lie detector tests, I think, and their their case is the most well-known one. And um, if you really look into it, it's like, how can you deny that something happened? Like, it's pretty obvious something happened to them. Um,
yeah.
and
And I actually wanted to bring Betty and Barney Hill up because, for those who know, it was like the first well-known case of a typical UFO abduction from the early 60s. But the needle that Adrian and Nicole were talking about, she had Betty Hill. She had the same experience, didn't she? And then this was like decades earlier.
yeah, it seems like the aliens have a certain procedure, modus operandi. So like every abduction is very similar. Um, a lot of the procedures are very similar. The For women, it's always something tampering with their stomach or their ovaries or reproductive organs. Men, same thing. A lot of extraction of sperm, a lot of looking into that kind of stuff, a lot of wellness checks where they check the body to make sure the person doesn't have, any life-threatening illness or disease or tumors or whatever. Um, so it seems like they are really thorough with that. And I'm starting to think that, and this is just my opinion again, that the typical grays that we think of, I don't know if they're completely sentient. I think they're more of a like robotic, like bio robot, where they're programmed to do certain tasks. So, because a lot of the abductions, it seems like the little small gray aliens have certain tasks that they have to do, and
Yeah,
then there's like a taller being that does the actual like doctor work. So like the little small guys usually take the person into the craft, strip them down, get them on the examination table, get them prepped, do all the little tests of like checking out their body and all that stuff. And so I'm wondering if they're not like robotic type bio things. I don't even know how to describe it. But and they're just set out to do that certain task, and then when the time's right, that's when the quote unquote doctor figure, usually like a mantis type being or a taller gray type being, comes out and does the like real like doctor work. So yeah, it's very interesting. And the more I look into
Yeah,
it, the more I'm like drawn to it because I'm like, I want to know more. I want to hear more. Like,
yeah, it never ends. But yeah, I've heard that also about the Greys, but it's hard to tell really, especially for monkeys like us. It's like we have no idea what civilization or it's like our species from a different world can look like if it's like thousands or millions of years of I'm sorry, ahead of us. So even what I was talking, the case I was mentioning earlier, where this woman had telepathical contact with one of them greys. If you take that explanation into account, well, a being that looks the way it looks, like those typical grey aliens with large eyes, small body, if it doesn't have any emotions anymore, it's literally just like a cold intellect. Like it's gonna look a bit robotic to us, even though it might still have its own consciousness and thoughts and everything. And if it's so far ahead of us, then it's gonna be quite unrelatable to us. This kind of being.
yeah, it's hard to tell. They just
Yeah.
seem robotic to me because, like I said, they basically do the same tasks for most of the abductions
Hmm.
that I've read on. It just seems like they're like going through the process. They're like the worker
Yeah.
bees.
Who knows?
But yeah, the whole thing just fascinates me. I plan to do more research into it. I hope to interview more people who have been abducted and or people who are involved in the abduction phenomenon.
Yeah.
Um,
Same here. So, to any of my listeners, if you have this kind of experience and you're willing to share, then both me and Jeremiah would love to hear it.
yeah, and I want like for my show, I just want people to know like it's a no judgment zone.
Yeah.
You can tell your story and not fear about getting ridiculed or made fun of. A lot of people are interested in it, and it's not every day you run into someone who's got abducted or at least remembers that they've got abducted. So
Well, at
yeah,
least they don't tell it.
or they don't tell, yeah, because they're
Yeah.
afraid people say they're crazy. So yeah, I like to have my show where you can have a platform to talk. And I told Adrian and everyone too, like if you want me to change your name or anything, we can totally make you an anonymous person, and you could just be some random person, and no one will ever know it's you. So yeah, it's fun. Fun, it might be the wrong word, but I enjoy interviewing.
Yeah, it's definitely fascinating, if nothing else. And I think that's also one of the values of, if not even it's one of the main purposes of all these phenomena, is to really open our minds and to what's possible and make us ask better questions. Because you see, like with the scientific community, they, based on the knowledge we have right now, they dismiss many times the notion of some other intelligence coming here, whether it's from another planet, from a different reality or something. They're like, the distances between the stars are too freaking large to cross. So it's if someone sees something in the sky, it can't be aliens. It's from another planet, it just can't be. But when we have these kinds of uh, phenomena, abductions, and jet fighters freaking following trying to chase down some of these objects, it really gets you questioning and opening up your mind to more possibilities. Because at the end of the day, people are way too closed off to so many things. I think that actually even John Mack at the end he was saying that this might be like the abduction phenomena. It might be an outreach program of the cosmos for the spiritually impaired on Earth.
Yeah, it's definitely a topic I love, and I like covering all that stuff on my show, UFOs, um, interviewing people from MUFON, uh, other researchers like Scott Allen Roberts, where he brings more of the ancient texts and biblical texts into it,
Mm-hmm.
and then L.A. Marzulli, who puts like a more religious spin on it. And yeah, I like covering it all because I don't want to pigeonhole myself into one belief, one thought process, because we really don't know the answer to it. So I like to stay open to different possibilities. Now I have my own personal beliefs, like I've discussed. But yeah, it's all about doing your own research and coming up with your own conclusion, and that's what my show is about. My motto for the show is question everything. So no matter what it
Definitely.
is, like don't just take everything at face value. Kind of look into it yourself. Make sure you make a sound decision. Um, don't just follow along, or you'll end
Yeah,
up in a
don't
cult.
just follow the experts.
So yeah, thanks for having me on. It was fun talking.
Yeah, definitely. So before you go, I usually ask them a couple of questions before my guest goes. So if there's one piece of advice you could give to people, what would it be?
My advice, number one, would be your true self. Don't try to live up to other people's expectations. Don't try to be something you're not, um, just to fit in or be cool or whatever. Be who you are, because at the end of the day, you have to live with yourself, and you're the only one that's really there for yourself. So if you're not being true to yourself, you're doing yourself a disservice because we're all meant to be our individual self. So if you're out there trying to be someone you're not living the way you're supposed to be living. Um, so that would be my number one advice. Um, Number two is just try to, like I'm trying to do, be more giving, help other people, do things for others, and um, the feeling will be better than getting things or money. I don't know. There's something wired in us that makes us feel good when we help other people. So
Yeah,
that would be
definitely.
my
So,
advice.
yeah, that's really good advice. And what do you think is the meaning of life?
Meaning of life is lessons, and learning from those lessons and not repeating the same mistakes over and over again. Um, I, everyone's human. We all make mistakes, but the key is to learn from them and moving forward to change, to not repeat those same mistakes. And I think life is just all about experience. Try to I try to cherish time with friends and family more and not just take it on surface level. Like I'll try to really appreciate the time spent with loved ones, whether it's family or friends, and just just trying to be the best person you can be, and it's all about the journey, not about the destination.
Yeah, that's true. And where can people find you?
You can find me on any podcast platform. And we actually just got accepted on India's number one streaming service.
Mm,
So we're on Ghana now. But any place that does podcasting, I'm on there. What if they're wrong? Paranormal. You'll know because you'll see half an alien face with "What if they're wrong" on the logo. Um, and then also, if my website www.whatifpod.com, whatifpod.com. On there, I have pictures of my guests, pictures of me. I have a contact page if you want to reach out to me for whatever reason. You can message me on there. I'm also on Instagram. What if they're wrong? That's where I do most of my social media stuff. I'll post funny memes based on like ghosts or aliens or Bigfoot or just something to make people laugh, and or any updates with the show. And you can also reach me on Instagram as well. I answer messages on there as well. And yeah, that's basically everywhere. I'm trying to be everywhere. I was doing TikTok for a little bit, but I just don't have the time or energy to devote to that
Yeah,
right now. So,
feel you.
but
Okay, it
yeah,
was a pleasure talking to you. And as always, you can find all the links in this description below. If you liked it, uh, give it a like, share, comment, share with your friends. We really appreciate it. So once again, thanks for your time.
yeah. Thanks for having me on. It was a blast. I like talking about all
Yeah,
this stuff. I'm a very much of a nerd. I'm a fringe
yeah, me
person.
too to some extent. There.
Yeah. So all this stuff is right up my alley.